Hi everyone, welcome to Government 2305. This is American government. Today we will be talking about public opinion. So, what is public opinion? Well, public opinion is defined as the values and attitudes, the attitudes that people have about issues, events, and personalities. So, what are values? Values or beliefs are defined as a person's basic orientation to politics. Values are the basic principle that shape a person's opinions about political issues and events. The next terminology is political ideology. Now, political ideology is a complex set of beliefs and values that, as a whole, form the general philosophy that you will have about the role of government. So, your values or your beliefs are your own orientation, your own take on politics. Values are those principles that are shaping your opinion about what you see on the political issues and events that are happening around you. An ideology is a set of those values and beliefs. Political ideology is that whole general philosophy that you, as an individual, hold about the entire role of government. So, attitude or your opinion, this is the specific view that you have on a particular issue, event, or personality. What is your attitude about the president? What is your attitude about the vice president? What is your attitude about the issue of equal rights? What is the attitude that you have towards abortion, towards pro-life, towards women's reproductive rights? The opinions that you have on any of these subjects, these specific views are your attitude. As the little drawing to the right here says, the public is the only critic whose opinion means anything at all. So when it comes to the issue of government, it is only your opinion that is going to matter. So, what are your political values? Now remember, Americans hold three common fundamental political values. The first one is liberty. Governmental interference with individual lives and property should be kept to a minimum, consistent with the general welfare of the public. So this means that as a population, we do not want government interfering with our lives and our property. Basically, liberty means that we want to have that freedom from governmental interference. Now, equality. We will be talking about this as equality of opportunity. This means that all people should be allowed to seek personal and material success. This success should be linked to personal effort and ability rather than any special privilege. So we are not saying that everybody is equal. We're not talking about that here. We are talking about everyone having the same opportunity to grow as a person and to have material success. We are saying that this equality of opportunity should flow to everyone according to their personal effort and ability. There should be no special privilege taken into consideration. Now, democracy. For democracy, this means that every person should have the opportunity to take part in the nation's governmental and policy-making process, and have some say in determining how we are governed. So, democracy gives you the opportunity to have a say, to participate in your government, in the policy-making process, to have a voice in the decisions that are made because these decisions will apply to you. Now, opinion formulation. How do we learn or form opinions? Keep in mind that individual attitudes are shaped by underlying political beliefs and values, but how do we as individuals come by these beliefs or attitudes? Well, first and foremost, there is political socialization. Now, political socialization is the process through which we as individuals learn these political beliefs and values. This is political socialization is where these values and beliefs are formed. Basically, this is an induction to you, the individual, into political culture. This means you are learning your beliefs and values on which you will base your opinion. So there are various socialization elements that come into effect when we are talking about creating your views on government. So depending on your socialization, you will either create different or similar views on government to those people that you are socializing with. So what are some of these agencies which can affect political socialization? Well, there are four agencies of socialization. The first one being the family. The family is the fundamental source of political orientation for an individual. It is often the first time we are subjected to political views and discourse or discussion. Of course, different family backgrounds produce different outlooks, therefore influencing the individual's understanding of his or her political world. Bear in mind, no individual is an identical copy of his or her family choice. In fact, many individuals hold opposite views to those of their family. Now, social groups. Social groups are also another important source of political orientation. There are many types of social groups. Some are social groups in which people belong to involuntarily, such as gender, religious, or racial groups. Voluntary social groups. These would be the types of groups such as political parties, labor unions, and occupational groups. And then there are those groups that are combined. These are groups that would be based on individual efforts. The class status one is born in may be shifted up or down. So, depending on what your situation was when you were growing up, you could either move up or you could move down depending on circumstances. So, here we have political parties or religious membership under these social groups. They are very strong groups that can affect your political orientation. Partisan people, people from political parties, tend to rely on political leaders for cues on what stance to take on political issues. Religion can affect an individual's attitude by providing a historical and philosophical experience. For instance, the Christian majority may not be offended by the use of their religious symbols involved in politics, but to other religions, this may be seen as an effort to undermine their religion. Now, social groups can also affect your political orientation. Unions and organizations can seek to educate members by holding rallies or having other political functions. Even peer pressure can affect orientation. It can cause a person to shift his or her perceptions to be that as the same as the group they are with. Finally, social groups can affect orientation through objective political interest. If you are rich, you have a different economic interest than a poor person would. Yet with all of these groups, none can fully explain your individual political views. Now, education. Education can be used both as a commonality and as a difference in the formation of political values and beliefs. Government uses public education to teach children a common set of values, such as liberty, democracy, and equality. But different levels of education can affect political participation. For example, college graduates vote more often and make their voice heard compared to those who do not have a college degree. Now, political conditions. Your environment and the conditions of your involvement in political life may also shape your political orientation. For example, the American political circumstances in the 1960s formed a cultural opposition to the Vietnam War and any kind of military conscription for the citizens of that generation. So if you talk to anybody that grew up in the 60s, they will have a strong aversion to war. They will be very politically active and have very strong opinions that go along with. Why? Because of the conditions and the environment in which they grew up and the extent of which that they participated in the political arena during those very formative years. Now, ideologies. What are political ideologies? Well, political ideology is the set of underlying orientations, ideas, and beliefs that form an individual's philosophy about and understanding and interpretations of government and politics. Let me repeat that. Political ideology is the set of underlying orientations, ideas, and beliefs that form an individual's philosophy about an understanding and interpretation of government and politics. There are two main ideologies in politics in America. The first ideology is the liberal ideology. This refers to someone who favors equality as the most important core value. Let me repeat that point. The liberal ideology refers to equality as the most important core value. Liberal ideology supports social and political reform, extensive economic governmental intervention, the expansion of federal social services, more vigorous efforts on behalf of the poor, minorities, and women, and greater concern for consumers and the environment. Now, the second ideology is the conservative ideology. This term refers to those who favor liberty as the most important core. Now, let me repeat that. The conservative ideology refers to those who favor liberty as the most important core value. Conservatives generally support the social and economic status quo and are suspicious of efforts to introduce new political formula and economic arrangements. Conservatives believe that a large and powerful government poses a threat to citizens' freedoms. However, the real political world is too complex to explain in terms of a struggle between liberals and conservatives. These ideologies can often have a mix of positions, and particular elements of an ideology may be more political than logical. So there are a couple of ideologies which are now well known and have gained traction among the mainstream. These are the Libertarian and Tea Party ideologies. So the Libertarian is a party which is somewhat of a combination between the conservative and the liberal. Looking at their ideologies, you can see some of the things that they believe in, which are substantially reduce the size and intrusiveness of government and cut all taxes. Let peaceful, honest people offer their goods and services to willing consumers without a hassle from government, so less regulations. Let peaceful, honest people decide for themselves what to eat, drink, read, or smoke, and how to dress, medicate themselves, or to make love without fear of criminal penalties. And finally, the U.S. government should defend Americans and their property in America and let the U.S. taxpayer off the hook for the defense bill of wealthy countries like Germany and Japan. Now, the other ideology is the Tea Party. The Tea Party is an offshoot of the Republican/Conservative Party. And the Tea Party believes that there should be constitutionally limited government, or that your personal freedom and your rights are what's more important, not a big government. Also, there should be free market economics, or that there should be economic freedom to grow jobs and your opportunities. And finally, there should be fiscal responsibility, or very simply put, there should be a debt-free future for you and generations to come. Now, opinion traits. There are several factors that help explain how and why public opinion does or does not shape national politics. These can include intensity of opinion, opinion stability and fluidity, political knowledge, the role of leaders in trying to direct or manipulate opinion, and the role of private groups attempting to alter opinion. So let's start with the intensity of opinion. The intensity of opinion is the depth or strength of feeling that you hold about an issue. These issues about which a segment of the population feels very strongly may become particularly important to politicians as a way to rally supporters. Stop and think of when you see the president holding his rallies. You see the people standing behind and in front of him, and as soon as he mentions a hot topic item or hot topic issue such as abortion or immigration or building the wall, how loud do the people get? They are voicing their opinion, right? They are showing the intensity of their opinion. So the next topic is going to be opinion stability and fluidity. In general, public opinion tends to be relatively stable. Changes only occur gradually over many months or years. Sometimes, however, a major shift in opinion over a short space of time is recorded, When this happens, it often prompts political leaders to pay attention to popular wishes. Stability or fluidity is the extent to which opinions can change or shift over a short period of time. Now, opinion consistency. This is an individual's belief and opinions and the fact that they are not always consistent with one another. Studies of political opinion have shown that most people don't, do not hold specific and clearly defined opinions on every political issue. As a degree, they are easily influenced by others. Now, the degree of consistency that citizens show is shaped by knowledge and information about political issues. In general, knowledgeable citizens are better able to evaluate new information and determine whether it is relevant to and consistent with their beliefs and opinions. As a result, better informed individuals can recognize their political interests and act consistently on behalf of them. Now, be aware there are ways that political opinion can be shaped by politicians. Politicians can lead opinion. This is when governmental leaders attempt to influence, manipulate, or manage the opinions of the people. Sudden dramatic events offer an opportunity for politicians to set the tone for public reaction. Political leaders pay close attention to public opinion, even when the country does not face a crisis. Stop and think. The day before 9/11 happened, nobody was thinking about terrorists, nobody was worried about planes going into buildings, but then 9/11 comes along and takes place. On 9/12, your opinion has changed from 9/10. Why? Because now you have President Bush on TV telling the world that we have just been attacked by an outside terroristic source. And everybody now forms an opinion because of this horrible event that just happened to the country. So, politicians can lead opinions. During a crisis, politicians will be in front of the camera, and with the advent of all the social media platforms we have 24/7 news. So it is more important and it is easier for politicians to now lead opinion. Politicians can also manipulate opinion. Sometimes governmental leaders succeed in manipulating the opinions to serve their political image purposes because they will use public relations techniques. So the manipulation of opinions can occur, but it is unlikely to succeed when Americans are more interested in or more informed about an issue. And most efforts to manipulate opinion can be neutralized by sustained counter publicity. Now, private groups also shape public opinion. Economic and public and political groups advance political ideas. For example, conservatives advance the Right to Life campaign to ban abortion at the center of Christian institutions. The issue remains a prominent one today. Typically, ideas are effectively marketed by groups with access to financial and media resources, public and private support, and sufficient education to attract interest. So private groups will shape public opinion. They use the same tactics. They will go out there and rally their supporters, get in front of the cameras, in front of the media, use social media platforms now to further their efforts to change and shape public opinion. Now, how do we measure public opinion? Measuring public opinion has become a science as a result of barriers caused by the distance and number of citizens participating in politics. So, how do we decide what public opinion is? Well, we will use polls. There are many polls, so we will go through a few of them and just give you some short information on each one. So first we have public opinion polls. These are scientific instruments for measuring public opinion. Politicians use these polls to decide whether or not to run for office, how to run for office, if they should support specific policies, how they should vote, and how they should campaign. Now a sample. In order to conduct a poll, the pollsters are the people conducting the poll, must choose a valid sample or a sample group selected by researchers. So a sample is that group that is selected to represent the most important characteristics of an entire population. Now, probability sampling. This is also called random sampling. This is a technique that is used by researchers to ensure that every individual in the population has an equal probability of being selected. One example of this would be if I took 100 people and gave them numbers 1 to 100 and drew the numbers out of a hat. Each person would have an equal probability of being selected. Now, random digit dialing. This is a way to reach probability sampling. Random digit dialing is a poll in which respondents are selected at random from a list of 10-digit telephone numbers. Every effort is made to avoid bias in the construction of the sample. Now, with the internet and having access to the web, polling may become viable using those means in the future, but there are still technical problems that would have to be resolved, such as fraudulent use of bots to mimic real people and the ability of fraudulent accounts. There are still barriers to using the internet for polling. Now, stratified sample is also known as stratification. Now, this is the process of dividing members of the population into homogeneous subgroups before starting a sample. Now, remember, homogeneous means the same. So we are dividing members of the population into similar subgroups before sampling. So what happens is that we are looking for our subgroup, our strata, to be mutually exclusive. So every element in the population must be assigned to only one group. This one group should also be collectively exhaustive, meaning no population element can be excluded. The simple random sampling or systematic sampling is applied within each group. This often improves the representativeness of the sample by reducing sampling errors. Now, cluster sample. With cluster sampling, the researcher divides the population into separate groups called clusters. Then a simple random sample of clusters is selected from the population. The researcher conducts his or her analysis on data from the sampled clusters. Compared to simple random sampling and stratified sampling, cluster sampling has advantages and disadvantages. For example, given equal sample sizes, cluster sampling usually provides less precision than either simple random sampling or stratified sampling. So it is less precise. On the other hand, if travel costs between clusters is high, then cluster sampling may be more cost effective than the other methods. Remember, we are trying to sample and receive and get samples of the population across the country. Unless you are doing a specific research project that is on a city or a state or a region, you are talking about trying to measure the public opinion across the entire country. Now, we have to be wary of selection bias. Now, selection bias, of course, will create a problem with surveys. Selection bias is a polling error that occurs when samples are not representative of the population being studied, and that will create errors in either over or under-reporting opinions. Even with reliable samples, surveys may fail to reflect public opinion, and this can be due to measurement error. So measurement error is the failure to identify the true distribution of opinions within a population because of errors such as ambiguous or poorly worded words in the survey questions. You will end up with measurement errors. Finally, the last characteristic when we are talking about measuring public opinion is push polling. Now, this is a new form of survey bias. Push polling is a technique in which questions are designed to shape the respondent's opinion. So if you are a survey taker, the questions that you will be given are created and worded in such a fashion as to get the response that the surveyors are looking for, right? Push polling is not a legitimate research method. It is instead a means of shaping public opinion and may contribute to American skepticism of the practice of polling. If researchers are able to get the answers that they want by writing the questions in such a fashion as to make you say things that you are truly not feeling, or to give an opinion that you truly do not hold, then there is no valid data. Now, public opinion polls are supposed to be straightforward question and answer polls that sample a random portion of the population, and these polls are meant to represent the true demographics of either a specific area or the entire country. Now, public opinion polls are conducted in person, by telephone. In most cases, they consist of several questions about a given topic or topics. The data that is collected is then used to calculate the percentage of the population who feel one way or another about these issues. This method is determined to be more random than those that target specific groups and is therefore considered more representative of the whole population. So here are some types of public opinion polls. We have a bellwether poll. This is an attempt to judge the opinions of an entire state or region based on the results taken from a single city or town. Imagine if people were trying to take or to gauge the opinion of the state of Texas, and the only town that they poll is Huntsville, Texas. Now, do you think Huntsville, Texas is representative of the entire state of Texas? This is the kind of poll where you would not have a true representation. But in a bellwether poll, this is what you are doing. Pollsters conduct studies to determine whether an entire area is representative of the entire state. Now, as I was saying, the bellwether poll is meant to be the opinions of an entire state or region based on the results from a single city or town. Stop and consider what that would mean depending on the town that is chosen. So you can see that while you would get an opinion, it might not actually be an opinion that is representative of that region. So what we find is that all of these polls, these public opinion polls that are out there, have pros and cons. They all have issues that come along with them. So here is a list of some of the other polls that are available out there to take or to measure public opinion. Just be aware that each of these polls has its pros and cons and that there are problems with them all. Now, no one poll is ever completely accurate. Nevertheless, polling is important. A major purpose of democratic government is to ensure that political leaders pay attention to public opinion. Although there is a good deal of evidence that suggests political leaders do pay attention to public opinion, there are also areas of disagreement between opinion and governmental policy. So just be aware of that, okay? Majorities may not be as strongly committed as the minority to a viewpoint. Additionally, the structure of American government was designed to moderate quick shifts in public opinion and to not immediately translate them into policy. So what we find is that governmental arrangements may produce policy decisions that lag behind prevailing popular sentiment. So the structure of the American government was not built to act right away on whatever the public opinion is at that particular moment. It takes us a long time to translate what the public wants into actual policy. And this is by design. So every time a new policy comes out, it may be that it was a popular policy or a popular public opinion 2, 3, maybe even 5 years prior to the policy coming out. Case in point, when same-sex marriage was finally made into U.S. law, so that same-sex marriage became legal across the country, public opinion had shown that same-sex marriage was something that the public stood behind. It was something that the public wanted, but it took many, many years before we got to the point where it became actual policy. So just because public opinion is popular does not mean that it will translate into actual action by the government. So bear that in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, polls are out there. A poll can be made to say and reflect anything. So be very wary of poll results. So every poll that you see on the news, be wary of it, take it with a grain of salt, and realize that it may not actually reflect the opinions of those people in the public. So I will end this here. I hope that if you have any questions, you will contact me. Otherwise, I will be back with a new topic next time. Thank you.